I had to do a redo on a message that I had given in times past. I had for many uh, eulogies, I had used Psalm 61, and I have a pet message. And that pet message is called Instructions for the Overwhelmed. And I took that from uh, I took that from Psalm 61 verses 1 through 4. David, at one of his low moments, said, "Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer." He says, "From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee." He says, "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of their wings." That word covert of their wings is anthropomorphic terms. That's when you put uh, earthly distinctions on somebody that's totally beyond the earth. So, in anthropomorphic terms, God's talking about keeping you in the covert of his wings. And we know he's not a bird. He's trying to make his awesomeness more relevant to those of us on the human plane. I had done this message a million times. I can do it in my sleep. And that word overwhelmed in the original language means covered up with darkness where you can't see your way. And if we use what the lexicographers use for the definition of overwhelm, it would mean to give too much of a thing to someone to inundate. Folks, look, I'm talking to you workplace folks. There are so many people that are overwhelmed. There are people overwhelmed to the point that they're about to put their shoes on their head and their hat on their feet. All of us, besides a time of mourning, are inundated. We're besieged with so many issues. COVID-19 has just sent the mental has challenged the mental prowess of so many. We've had to deal with being shut in, stay at home, come to work. I risk going to work? Do I risk going in the marketplace? Will I ever get any Lysol? Folks, there are so many concerns. But the psalmist at his low moment, he says from the end, he prayed. And I know business person, this is a business site, but I'm a business person that prays. He says, "From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee." And he said, when my heart is overwhelmed, when I can see no other way, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. I know, and the psalmist went on to say, "For thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy." Folks, there are so many threats on our minds on a daily basis, particularly in the workplace. I remember Bishop Jake's 7 steps to working in a hostile environment. And I'm not saying that may be your thing, but the workplace presents challenges. You bring in a sundry amount of people from all corners, all different mindsets, all different creeds, colors, and everything, and we become the melting pot. There are so many people. Well, that's not a challenge by itself. We're living in a pandemic. And I know no one's supposed to work, bring from home to work, and you're not supposed to bring work to home, but it's hard to separate the two. Folks, we're in such a challenging moment, and I thought that this text was only fit for funerals. But there are so many people besieged. There are so many people overwhelmed. I never heard of panic attacks like back in the day. But now we're in a day where so many have counselors, and I'm not knocking that. I have a friend that preaches to stadiums, and he says every now and then he has to go sit on somebody's couch too. I'm not knocking that. There is room. I think the church sometimes is too reluctant. We try to put a spiritual in on what may be severe mental health crisis, and I believe that God can heal minds through counselors, through psychiatrists, through psychologists, coaches, through whatever. But I think that so many people in corporate settings, in workplace, in your entrepreneurial business, so many people are overwhelmed because we're inundated with so many things. We got social media forever. We got feeds coming from this, feeds coming from that. We got the meetings. We got traffic. I don't know any metropolitan area that doesn't have a traffic hold up somewhere. And folks, in the midst of all of that, many of us are overwhelmed. I have been there before. I may be sitting there now. But every time that I dealt with being overwhelmed, I prayed, and I asked to be led to the rock is higher than I. I could not heal. I could not deal with my problems at the level where I'm at. I had to look higher. And I'm telling you, and I pray, because so many of us have issues. So many of us are hurting in places where others can't see. We look so good to the natural eye. We look like we got it together. We got so many things going for us. We look good. We smell good. But so many people are hurting in places that no one else can see. So I'm just telling you, and I'm repenting in a way, because I thought that instructions for the overwhelmed were being led to the rock is appropriate at funeral services, because that's the time where you feel like putting your shoes on your head and your hat on your feet. However, there's some times in the workplace that you feel like doing the same thing. Folks, I'm giving you that. And I don't care what, you may be a PhD, you may be a white collar worker, you may be a blue collar worker, you just may be a guy without a shirt. But all of us have to deal with these things. Between our ears, there are battles that are being fought on a daily basis. What helps me from being overwhelmed is that I'm led to that same rock that David was led to. David said one time in scripture that he would have fainted had not he believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I have that same resolve. There are things that challenge me. There are things that come at me a million miles a second. But I would have fainted. But if I had not believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. My brother, my sister, my fellow business person, my fellow brother, sister in the faith. When your heart is overwhelmed, when you don't see another way, stop trying to tell your problems. Stop telling God about your big problems and find a way to tell your problems about your great big God. When your heart is overwhelmed, make sure that you're led to the rock that is higher than I. That's my word to you. That's what you do when you're overwhelmed. Be blessed.